welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm taking you with me to the library. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my bingo prompt for my summer book bingo for Judge a Book by Its Cover. And I figured what more fun way to do that than to come to the library and check out a bunch of books that are grabbing me with their covers and then try a chapter and decide which one I want to read. This is the best way to do this kind of thing because I don't have to do any research about the book. I don't have to wait and see, like, is this a kind of book for me? I'm solely going to be going off the covers. I'm going to be checking out the teen section, the middle grade section, the adult section. So this will not by any means be based on genre or anything like that. I'm just going to look for covers that I enjoy and go from there. And this is a risk-free way to do that because I am not purchasing these books. So it's no waste of money or anything like that. So I'm super excited. I'll take you with me. We'll see what we can find. It's a little bit of time later because I picked those books at the library when I had time to go, but didn't have time to start them yet. So I am planning to start them either today or tomorrow. So I have my pile of books here, so I thought I would go through and show you what I ended up getting, even though there are clips in the vlog. I just want kind of an overview of what they are. I picked these based on their covers, like I said, but I am gonna read a little bit of the inside flap to just kind of tell you a little bit about what it's about, and then I can tell you what I thought of the first chapters at the end. So first one I have here is the middle grade, The Troubled Girls of Dragonmere Academy. I love the tower, love the girls, love the swirling magic around them. So it says, if no one notices Marin Lupu, it's because of her brother Luca, and that's because of what everyone knows. Luca is destined to become a sorcerer. The Lupus might be from a small village far from the capital city, but that doesn't matter. Every young boy born in Illyria may possess the rare ability to wield magic to protect the country from the terrifying force known only as the Dread. For all the hopes the family has for Luca, no one has any for Maria, who can never seem to do anything right. There's more, but I don't want to read too much and be spoiled. Then we have Dragon Fruit. This might be a tiny bit of cheating because my friend Dia read this book and I thought the cover was gorgeous and she liked it, so that is part of the reason why I picked it up, but I really do love the cover. So this is a fantasy, also a YA fantasy. It says Hana Lee of Tamarind is the cherished daughter of an old island family, but when her father steals a sea dragon egg meant for an ailing princess, she's forced into a life of exile. In the years that follow, Hana Lee finds solace in studying the majestic sea dragons that roam the Naminomi Sea. The next one is How High We Go in the Dark. This is an adult, I don't know, I feel like it might be sci-fi or speculative fiction or something like that. I'm not totally sure. It says, in 2030, a grieving archaeologist arrives in the Arctic Circle to continue the work of his recently deceased daughter at the Batagaiki crater, where researchers are studying long-buried secrets now revealed in melting permafrost, including the perfectly preserved ruins of a girl who appears to have died of an ancient virus. We have another YA fantasy, A Magic Steeped in Poison. I feel like I have heard people talk about this, but I don't know who and I don't know when. But I feel like I have heard of this. I love the cover. It's so beautiful. I think it might be tea-based magic. For Ning, the only thing worse than losing her mother is knowing that it's her own fault. She was the one who unknowingly brewed the poison tea that killed her mother. The poison tea that now threatens to also take her sister, Shu. When Ning hears of a competition to find the kingdom's greatest Shanongshi masters of the ancient and magical art of tea making, she travels to the imperial city to compete. Oh my gosh, that sounds like amazing. We have another YA fantasy because like YA fantasy has amazing covers, they just do. This is Of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen, so also feels very Asian and very, I don't know, like dragony and stuff. 18-year-old Ah-Hyu Ying dreams of becoming a world-class engineer like her father, but after his unexpected murder, a heartbroken Ying is determined to discover why anyone would threaten a man who ultimately chose a quiet life over fame and fortune. Left with only a journal of her father's engineering secrets and a jade pendant snatched from the assassin, Ying follows the trail to the capital and the prestigious Engineers Guild, a place that harbors her father's hidden past. Next we have an adult book, The Book of M by Peng Shepherd. Loved the cover of this, and then I was like, Peng Shepherd, where do I know that name? She also wrote The Cartographers, which is a book that made the rounds on BookTube like a year or two ago. I don't know, but I don't know if this is maybe her debut or if it came after. I don't know if it's her debut, but it came out in 2018, so it did come before. One afternoon at an outdoor market in India, a man's shadow disappears, an occurrence that science cannot explain. He is only the first. The phenomenon spreads like a plague, and while those affected gain a strange new power, the magic comes at a horrible price: the loss of all their memories. Next we have The City of Brass, which I know everyone has read this book. I feel like lots of people love it. It's the first in a trilogy. Like, I don't know if it wasn't in the YA section at my library, but I've heard some people say it's YA and some people say that it's adult. So I don't really know which one it is, but I have always loved the cover of this. And when I was perusing the fantasy section, I saw it and I was like, yes, that works. I feel like this is kind of like Arabian Nights vibes, but I don't actually really know that much about it. On the streets of 18th century Cairo, Nari is a con woman of unsurpassed skill. She makes her living swindling Ottoman nobles, hoping to one day earn enough to change her fortunes. But when Nari accidentally summons Dara, an equally sly, darkly mysterious jinn warrior, during one of her cons, she learns that even the cleverest of schemes can have deadly consequences. Next, we have another fantasy. There's a lot of fantasies here. Oh well, fantasy covers just grabbed me. That's The Fox Wife by Yang-Si Chu. I have several friends that read this book this year. I think that they liked it, but they didn't like the ending. So I might be setting myself up for failure with this one. It is totally not the summer vibe. It is very wintry, but I really love the cover. Manchuria 1908. In the last years of the dying Qing Empire, a courtesan is found frozen in a doorway. Her death is clouded by rumors of foxes, which are believed to lure people by transforming themselves into beautiful women and handsome men. Bao, a detective with an uncanny ability to sniff out the truth, is hired to uncover the dead woman's identity. Since childhood, Bao has been intrigued by the fox gods, yet they've remained tantalizingly out of reach until, perhaps, now. So I love fox mythology, and I didn't know that that was a part of Chinese mythology as well, which is really interesting. I knew it was in Korean thanks to Tale of the Nine-Tailed, which is an amazing K-drama that has a lot to do with nine-tailed foxes. Obviously this is set in China, so it is going to probably be a little different. So I always find it interesting when different mythologies have some similarities, but also some things that differentiate themselves. Last but not least is totally not the same vibe as anything that is on this list, and it is another middle grade called Where the Water Takes Us by Alan Barilaro. And what a gorgeous cover. Feels so summery, feels just like a beautiful summer on the lake. And it has illustrations too, so this is gonna be much shorter than the other books on here, so I could probably squeeze it in even if I don't choose it. Actually, it really doesn't have, I thought it had illustrations. It really doesn't have very much of it. It kind of has ones on the side. Oh, there are some. So there's one. But then it's also like, if you flip through, let me see if I can do it this way. It goes this way actually. So you can kind of see how the water's getting bigger like that. And then at the end, or well, at the beginning. So it's really pretty. Ava's mom is about to have twins and the pregnancy is not going well. So Ava is sent away to her grandparents' cabin. Normally, spending time at the lake with Nono and Nono is wonderful, but everything is different now. Ava can't be distracted from the feeling that something terrible, something irrevocable is going to happen to her mom. Okay, so this is gonna be more contemporary, potentially hard-hitting. I don't know, but it's totally not the vibe of anything else here. Okay, so here's my stack of spines. It's 9 books. I guess I could have tried to do 10, but I didn't. I didn't try to do a specific number. I just kept grabbing and my arms were tired after this many. So that's where I stopped. So I'm gonna try a chapter of each of these and then I'm gonna report back, let you know what I thought, which ones I really loved and which one I'm gonna continue reading. Hello, let's chat. I have tried chapters of all of my books and I'm gonna rank them from you in order of like my least favorite first chapter to the books that are gripping me more. So my least favorite one, This Is Cheating. I didn't even finish the first chapter for this because it was kind of long. I want to say it was like 30 or 50 pages, something like that. Kind of on the lengthy end, but it's How High We Go in the Dark. So basically I kept trying to read this and I was just like having trouble focusing on it, and like the writing style just like was not clicking for me at all. And I kept trying and trying, and then I'm like, wait a second, this is like supposed to be try a chapter, so I'm trying to finish the chapter, but also like I'm trying to find a book that is interesting me, so I gave up. Next, bottom of the pile is Where the Water Takes Us. This, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't that interesting of a first chapter. I feel like it's probably a really short read, so it wouldn't be one that would be difficult for me to read, but it just wasn't really interesting me that much. So you'll notice I had a lot of YA fantasies within this range here, and it's really interesting because I felt like they were all really similar. All 4 of them had female main protagonists, and all of them had lost one or both of their parents, and they were different from societal expectations. And I'm like, wow, these are all the same. But it was really funny. So the bottom of the pile for that one is of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen. The writing style wasn't really particularly gripping me. The story was, I don't know, like she wants to be an engineer like her father, and that's not what people expect of her. And then her father's workshop gets broken into and she finds him like dying at the end of the first chapter, which sounds really exciting, and it was fine. It wasn't bad. If I didn't have a stack of all these other books, I would actually consider continuing. Then we have Dragon Fruit, and I liked the first chapter of this, but I think maybe it's because I just read Memoirs of Lady Trent. It wasn't gripping me as much as some of the others here in this stack. So I did like it, and I actually would like to continue reading this. But I guess I just wasn't in as much of a dragony mood compared to some of these other books. Then we have The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, and I really liked the first chapter of this a lot in terms of writing style, but it was kind of creepy in a way that I didn't really like. So we've got a young girl who is like a healer, and she's able to see what's wrong with people. She has this ability to do that, but she's like masquerading as this person who is doing these kind of like exorcisms for jinns that are taking possession of people's bodies. And she doesn't think it's real at all, but then at the end of the first chapter, she actually encounters something weird during one of these exorcisms. And I was just like, I don't really like how creepy this feels right now. So I didn't want to continue with this. Then we had this, actually this is the same as the YA books, where it's a girl who, she's just not fitting the societal conventions of what everyone thinks that she should do and be like. And it's really interesting how many of the books I picked up that they all feel the same in terms of that. It's kind of weird. So this is also the same in that her brother is, everyone assumes that he's magical. I'm guessing that maybe she's the one who's magical. I don't really know. I didn't know past the first chapter. We don't really get any indication of that. But it was fun, but a lot of the kind of magical elements reminded me a little bit of another book that I'm currently reading, so I decided not to pick this one up. I really liked the first chapter of The Foxwife. This is one of my favorite ones that I read. It was really descriptive. Again, we've got like a woman who's not like other girls, but she's actually like a fox, So she actually has some magical abilities and all of that kind of stuff. So it goes into Chinese and other Asian mythology that has the foxes in it, which I've already mentioned. So I'm not going to get too into that, but I really liked this. Part of the reason it didn't end up a little higher on my list is because like it's very wintry feeling. So it's not like I'm looking particularly for a seasonal book, but there was a couple other books I liked a little bit more than this one. Another book of someone who's just not like everyone else is A Magic Steeped in Poison. So this is really similar to all of the other books that I have mentioned, apparently, most of them. 5 out of the 9 books all had this same premise of a girl who's living in a fantasy world and she's just not fitting societal conventions, and her family, like her mother's dead or her father's dead or they're both dead. Like that is true in this as well. However, this one felt like had the most unique and cool premise to it, in that all of the magic is based around tea, which is so cool. So her mother was someone who brewed these magical cups of tea and was able to tell things and had giftings with tea and could make teas that would give people abilities or heal people or things like that. And her mother ends up dying from a cup of tea that she brewed, and it wasn't because like she did anything particularly wrong. There's someone that's going around and poisoning blocks of tea. And so she ends up entering in this competition, or she wants to enter into a competition where she is able to become like the master tea maker for the kingdom and also receive a favor from royalty. And the favor that she wants is the same pot of tea that she brewed for her mother that killed her mother, made her sister incredibly sick. And so she wants the best physicians that the kingdom can offer to work on her sister. So that's where I left off in that. I really, really liked this one a lot, but I was just as equally gripped by the first chapter of the Book of M by Peng Shepherd. And so I actually went beyond a first chapter for both of these books to try to decide which one I wanted to end up reading. And I landed on the Book of M because the writing is really interesting and good, but also like the premise is really interesting. It's very different from every other book that I have here. It's super dystopian. So there's this weird thing that is going around the globe where people are losing their shadows, and the first person who does, it's like this phenomenon, and he's like famous and all these people want to meet him and all this stuff. But after he loses his shadow, within like a week of that, he starts losing his memories. And so then this is going throughout the world where people are losing their shadows, and then they're losing their memories and losing their grip on reality. But they also have some ability to be able to warp reality based on what they remember. So we start out, we're following a married couple, and she has lost her shadow like 2 weeks previous, but still has her memories. And they're trying to survive in this dystopian world. They've lost all power in the United States, and they like cities are completely like looted and wrecked, and people are dying. And so it's super dystopian, not at all what I thought it was going to be. And then we also follow a young girl who is an Iranian, not immigrant. She moved to the United States on like a green card to be able to compete in archery. And so that's kind of like her story. And it's really, really interesting. There is a possibility that I could still DNF this because it does have some content that I don't love so far. I tend to avoid books that have like any sexual content in them that's like even remotely graphic. And I wouldn't say that this is like extremely graphic because there's only been like 1 or 2 scenes that have been like a sentence or 2, but they also have not felt in any way smutty or anything like that, or titillating in any way. It's like this husband and wife who they know that everything is changing, and they know that like this could kind of like be the last time that they remember each other. And so there's a lot of sadness tinged to it, and it's just, yeah. So I don't know. I'm continuing with it because it's so intriguing. I'm now like 100 pages into it. And another reason I almost didn't pick this book is because it's like 500 pages long. I think it's the longest book on the stack. So I could easily finish this one because it's also smaller, I think. Not only is it less pages, but the pages are smaller, and I think the print might be bigger than this one too. But I'm just like, every time I pick this up, I'm like enthralled. So this needs to be the one that I continue. So for right now, I'm continuing it. I'm gonna come back and share my final thoughts when I've finished it. Hopefully it continues to be as good as it is right now. Also, I did find out that this is Peng Shepherd's debut. So far, very impressed. with her writing and just what she's exploring here. Anyways, so I'll check in with you when I'm done. Hello friends, let's wrap up this vlog on the Book of M. I did finish it and I was so intrigued by the beginning of it. It was so gripping to me, but I felt like it kind of derailed a bit. So to kind of give you my final thoughts, this might get like a little spoilery, but it'll be mild spoilers. There won't be anything specific because there are some really interesting plot twists in the last like third of this book that I really enjoyed. So I mentioned that we were following multiple people. So we're following a husband and a wife, and the wife has lost her shadow and is forgetting, and her point of view that we get is her recording into a tape recorder that her husband Ori has given her, so that way she can keep talking to him and hopefully keep remembering. Then we have the girl Naz, who is an Iranian archer who hopes to be on an Olympic team. And lastly, we have an amnesiac patient who has lost his memory naturally, like he had an accident and had a head injury and doesn't remember anything before that. So his has no connection to the shadows being missing, but they take him to go talk to the first person whose shadow goes missing, who's losing his memory, in hopes that they can learn something from the two of them interacting. I found the overall premise of this to be so fascinating, in addition to it really feeling kind of haunting, especially when we're following Max, the wife who's losing her memory. And there are things that she says kind of like, at first I was angry, but every day I forget more. Maybe I'll forget so much I won't remember what I've lost, or that I've lost anything at all. You can't miss what you don't know you had, can you? And so there's like moments where it just feels so haunting, especially following Max in this journey. But I found that the story itself kind of derailed and got like more and more journeyed into the realm of magical realism, whereas it starts very dystopian. There are elements of science fiction as they're trying to figure out what's causing this, and we have scientists who are key parts of the narrative of this amnesiac patient. They're trying to figure out what's going on, why the shadows are disappearing, how they can maybe restore some of this memory loss or prevent this from spreading further. In the beginning, they don't know, is this something that is contagious? Is this spreading from person to person? And they have no idea. And so it's really interesting to try to see them figure that out. I really liked the amnesiac's point of view for a good portion of the time. Towards the end, that devolved a little bit for me as well. But as I mentioned, the people who have lost their memories, they're able to warp reality because of the things that they don't remember. So there's an element of magical realism to this, to the point where someone is reminded of a marketplace that they loved and frequented and went there all the time with their family, and they don't remember it. And so the moment they realize that there's this market that they don't remember, all of a sudden the market disappears. And there's times where Ori is going through the woods and he sees a deer that instead of antlers has wings on his head, because his wife has forgotten that deer don't have antlers. And then there's another time where someone is speaking to a wolf because they have forgotten that they can't speak to a wolf. And so some of this is like, okay, some of this is really interesting how this works, but it's also really weird because it's like, okay, so this entire marketplace disappeared along with the people who were currently inside of the marketplace because one person forgot about it. What about all the people who remember it? What about people maybe who even have lost their shadows, but they still remember that this market exists? Like, how does one person have the ability to completely remove something that contains other people inside of it? So there's things like that that just like don't make any sense, and the ending also doesn't make any sense because she has to bend so much to make this story work, and you have to suspend so much of your disbelief, which, I mean, isn't that true in general with dystopian or anything that has any element of fantasy or magical realism or sci-fi? Most of the time you have to suspend your disbelief because these aren't things that actually currently are happening or could happen in our world. And the lack of answers and structure around how that works ended up kind of bothering me because it ended up feeling so nonsensical. In the end, I think I just wanted more structures and more kind of like rules surrounding how all this worked and more answers, because that's something we don't really get. Like, I guess this is the most spoilery thing that I'm gonna say, so skip ahead like 30 seconds or something so that way you don't hear this if you don't want to hear it. But towards the end, a scientist is like, well, but we don't know what causes this. And someone else says, well, it doesn't even matter anymore because it's here and we can't stop it. So it doesn't even matter how this is happening anymore. And that's the answer we get as to why people are losing their shadows. So I feel like the idea was fascinating. I felt like the relationships gripped me at the beginning, but then as the book went on, it just completely like spun out of control with like the things that it was trying to do and the direction it took. I feel like it would have been better executed if it had been like a short story or a novella kind of a thing that was exploring this idea of memory being attached to people through their shadows. And there are references to, you know, like Peter Pan and Indian mythology that has different stories of like shadow gods and stuff like that. And there are really interesting ties that are happening here, but I felt like it failed in its execution, unfortunately. I still think that this has a beautiful cover. I love the cover. Ultimately, super interesting, but a bit unsatisfying. I wish that this try chapter had had a bit of a happier ending, where judging a book by its cover actually was successful in helping me find a book that I absolutely loved. But unfortunately, that is not what happened. I do still have several of the books out from the library that I really enjoyed the first chapter of, and I hope to read them maybe in September. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. Have you read any of the books that I tried a chapter from? And if so, are there any that you think that I would enjoy if I stuck with them? And of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've also read the Book of M. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.